So coming to civil service reform, if I'd ask you about the most touchy issues, there's been something called the National Police Commission, which has been an idea suggested in various commissions or reports for quite a while. Why do you think, sir, that this actual neutrality of the bureaucracy is not being allowed? Why is the National Police Commission still not possible?
Yes, let me first tell you, if I might say, correct you, you'll pardon my using this language. We've had two National Police Commissions in the country already. The first was headed by Mr. Rustam ji, and the second by a very eminent Cabinet Secretary called Mr. Dharamveera. Mr. Rustam ji was from the Northeast, had a police background, and Mr. Dharamveera had headed the civil service. This was Mr. Dharamveera's commission was set up in the 70s and Mr. 80s, and Mr. Rustamji's in the 60s. Both these commissions looked at all the issues affecting the law and order machinery and the way new roles being assigned to the police. The problem is we haven't implemented many of their recommendations, including about providing housing to Mr. Rustamji had recommended provide housing for a certain number of policemen as a necessity, improve their emoluments, the working conditions, etc. We haven't accepted those, or we've been expanding the police force without really doing all that's required to look at making them more effective. We haven't undertaken the modernization of the police force, both in terms of not only just applying to them modern management techniques in managing the cadre, but also in terms of their uniforms, in terms of their wherewithal, in terms of their arms, etc. The training, the periodical refresher training which they need to be put at, because their responsibilities are so many and so onerous that nobody is willing to spare his men to go and retrain or go and have refresher training. I think it's extremely necessary before we set up commissions to look at what has been recommended in the past and why we are not able to implement those, rather than ask new people to look at these issues and once again put their recommendations in cold storage.
So it's often been suggested that particularly the police forces, since they are under the state government purview in any case, law and order is indeed a state subject. There has been an allegation that during certain communal riots in recent times, the state police forces have gotten communalized. The fact that they have kowtowed to the state, existing political setup of the time, and they have, acted at their behest and not actually carried out their duties the way they should have. This is an allegation that has come from within the civil service also, without it, and from the media and from all people from all walks of life. So, sir, how can we insulate something as sensitive as, say, police, peacemaking or law and order from such pernicious influence?
I think it is the allegations are not unfounded. It has happened. We certainly need to first ask the policemen only what is expected of them to do, not ask them to perform beyond what is their role. Very often, the police machinery has been used by politicians, senior management in the government, etc., to do jobs which are not legitimately theirs, including spy on their opposition, get intelligence on them, give feedback, etc. I don't think that's a legitimate job of the police. The police is, if the information the police has to collect, it's not about political opposition members, but it's about opposition to the establishment, opposition to the society, etc. Right. We have to be very careful about that. But the moment the policeman is doing something beyond what is required as a public duty, that is where the nexus between the politician and the policeman develops. It also happens among the civil servants. Since we are now talking only about policemen, I'm just taking their example. Once that thing starts happening, there is bound to be partisan role being played. And the politician rewards him for doing a thing which is out of the way, and reward might be in terms of better postings, more comfortable housing, more comfortable sort of wherewithal to move around, etc. And he is exploiting human weakness. And that's why this person doesn't remain any longer neutral. And this lack of neutrality can manifest itself in a number of ways, including during communal rights, etc., playing to the requirements of a politician who might be from a particular community or who might have a particular political base, which might cut across castes or which might be in favor of a particular class or a particular region. That's how these things evolve.
So, coming to the power sector, rather the energy sector, India has these galloping power requirements of its own, and the Minister of Power indeed had a vision for power for all by 2012. It's going to be 2011, and we are very far short of that. If we see our immediate neighborhood, China is adding something like 100,000 megawatts a year, and our combined generation is just 1,60,000 or maybe
Yes,
1,80,000.
160 gigawatts, that's about
That's right,
160,000.
So China is adding about nearly half our combined generation per year, whereas this is what we've done in about 40, 45 odd years. So what is the way out?
I think we need to liberalize this sector, liberalize in a very larger way. We need not be looking at the costs at which power stations are being set up. We should be interested in the end product. At what rate the electricity can be made available to the people, to the grid, etc., rather than our looking into the capital costs of projects, etc. But this is easier said than done, what I'm suggesting. We need to be absolutely sure that if you are asking somebody to come and set up a power project, you shorten the period within which he can set this up. If he is to go and get environmental clearance, if he is to go and get the land, if he is to make all the arrangements, preparatory arrangements, it takes him a long time. That converts into costs. Right. And the costs, higher capital costs, higher implementation periods, and those convert into higher tariffs. I think it's extremely essential that we, as a state, keep a shelf for projects which are absolutely ready in all ways, including with land availability, and then go forward to ask the private sector to go ahead and implement those, and let there be competition amongst the providers in terms of the end cost, that is the tariff at the cost of the electricity which they will supply, rather than our looking at other processes, etc.
Somewhat like the UMPP way.
Absolutely. I would say that UMPP is, we've just started it, we have limited experience, and that's been happening only at the federal level, 4,000 megawatts and above power stations. I'm talking of much smaller power stations also, and the state now, rather than itself doing more and more developing of power, must become a facilitator of in a way which I was mentioning, because there is now private sector willing to come and invest, but the private sector doesn't want to get into all the hassles of setting up and looking for favors, as if it's a favor for it to be allowed to set up a power station. Let everything be bid out, small or big. Whether it's hydro, thermal, nuclear, bid it out. Nuclear as in when you allow the private sector to come in. And let that the only criteria be what's the end product, the cost of the end product.